human coronavirus vaccine trial shows that it's more than 90% effective. That's a much better efficacy than expected, so keep your fingers crossed. The Food and Drug Administration on Monday also granted emergency use authorization for Eli Lilly's experimental antibody drug for some COVID-19 patients. Doctors will be allowed to administer it to patients who are not hospitalized, but who face a risk of serious illness due to their age or other conditions. Trial data showed that a one-time infusion of the drug reduced the need for hospitalization or emergency room visits for those high-risk patients. Donald Trump received a similar treatment when he was diagnosed with COVID-19 in early October. Dr. Anthony Fauci said the treatment likely contributed to Trump's recovery. It should be noted that Trump's acolyte, Chris Christie, was also given the drug, and it's likely that Ben Carson is getting it now. You and I, however, aren't quite so lucky. And if they succeed in killing what's left of the Affordable Care Act, even once it is available, we won't be able to afford it. So on Monday, Donald Trump fired Defense Secretary Mark Esper by tweet in what could be the start of a purge by the lame duck of those who don't adequately support him. And finally, here in South Florida, we are mopping up after Tropical Storm Eta flooded some areas with a downpour that swamped entire neighborhoods. Eta was the 28th named storm in a very busy hurricane season and the first to make landfall in Florida this year. Beware. Theta formed late Monday night over the northeast Atlantic, becoming the 29th named storm of this season, which officially ends on November 30th. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
The Leslie Marshall Show, the only true democracy in talk radio, of, for, and by you, the people. Live nationwide and streaming live at lesliemarshallshow.com. Call in with your thoughts at 888-6-LESLIE.
Hey, here to set you free. How you doing? Happy Tuesday. I'm Leslie Marshall. This is the only true democracy in talk radio, of, for, and by you, the people. We have a great guest joining us in a little bit. But first up, we like to check in and tell you guys what's going on in the news. And let's start it off and check what is ripped from the headlines. First up, this blew my mind when I saw it on Twitter today. I thought it was fake news, as they like to say, but sadly, it is not. Take a listen to our Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, when speaking to reporters today, refusing to acknowledge the victory of Joe Biden, former vice president and president-elect, and he says there will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. What? Even though Republicans behind the scenes have told people like Senator Chris Coons, hey, congrats on your victory. We just can't say it out loud. Spineless. Let's take a listen.
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. All right, we're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly. The world should have every confidence that the transition necessary to make sure that the State Department is functional today, successful today, and successful with the president who's in office on January 20th, mid-afternoon, will also be successful. I went through a transition on the front, and I've been on the other side of this. I'm very confident that we will do all the things that are necessary to make sure that the government, the United States government, will continue to perform its national security function as we go forward.
So you believe there's widespread voter fraud, that the reports that we're getting from Pennsylvania, from Michigan, showing vote totals in massive leads or significant leads with 99% reporting are going to be overturned, and that the United States failed to conduct a fraudulent free election?
Rich, I'm the Secretary of State. I'm getting calls from all across the world. These people are watching our election. They understand that we have a legal process. They understand that this takes time, right? It took us 37 plus days in an election back in 2000. We conducted a successful transition then. I'm very confident that we will count, and we must count every legal vote. We must make sure that any vote that wasn't lawful ought not be counted. That dilutes your vote if it's done improperly. Got to get that right. When we get it right, we'll get it right. We're in good shape.
What? When we get it right, just let me know that's ending, Marky Mark. When we get it right, what I'm hearing is only if we get the results we want, because that's what we're hearing from the courts. You cannot just have a lawsuit and claim fraud when you have no evidence. This is just blowing my mind. And why didn't any reporter, I'm sorry, really, come on, where are your cojones out there, people? People in politics and people in the media. Why didn't you ask, what do you mean there'll be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration? Are you, as Secretary of State of the United States, telling foreign leaders that are our allies that this is not an accurate election? Let me just be clear. In Maricopa County, in Maricopa County, in Arizona, right? Is that the county I'm talking about? I can't even, I'm getting them all confused now. Georgia, Arizona. Huh? I don't know if it's Arizona. I tweeted it out earlier. There is one county where they are questioning 180 votes, even though Joe Biden has a lead by almost 15,000. That's good. That's Maricopa County, okay? The largest county in Arizona where Phoenix is, right? 180 votes. Do it. By the way, these were votes that were thrown out because they weren't signed, they weren't filled out properly. And even if all of them are allowed back in, one, you don't know they'd all be for Trump. They may all be for Biden, giving him 180 more. Two, even if that's the case, and it won't be, but even if that's the case, 180 is not going to change almost 15,000. It's just not going to happen. And even if they could change Pennsylvania with Arizona and Nevada, Joe Biden is president of the United States. With Pennsylvania alone, even with North Carolina, Donald Trump is not. And Georgia is probably going to go to Joe Biden after a recount, because recounts have never resulted in a presidential election having the state switch and the outcome of the election switch as well. Let's rip another. Well, the guy that's having the calm in the storm and acting presidential is the true president-elect. Joe Biden is downplaying our current president, Donald Trump's refusing to concede. Take a listen to the presidential-elect, former Vice President Joe Biden.
Thank you, Mr. President-elect. During the campaign, you said you were not naive about how difficult it would be to unite the country. It's now 3 days after you were projected as the president-elect. The president himself says he has won this election. His own administration has not moved forward to give you access to what you need to do to begin the work of your transition. Just a few minutes ago, the Secretary of State, when asked if he would cooperate with a smooth transition, he said there will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. I wonder if you have a message for the president who may well be watching right now, and how do you expect to be able to work with Republicans when so many have thus far refused to even acknowledge your victory?
Well, first of all, we are already beginning the transition. We're well underway. And the ability for the administration in any way by failure to recognize this our win does not change the dynamic at all in what we're able to do. We've announced yesterday, as you know, the health group that we put together today. We're going to be moving along in a consistent manner, putting together our administration, the White House, and reviewing who we're going to pick for the cabinet positions. And nothing's going to stop that. And so I'm confident that The fact that they're not willing to acknowledge we won at this point is not of much consequence in our planning and what we're able to do between now and January 20th.
Again, let's listen to the president-elect, Joe Biden. On the Senate Majority Leader newly elected to the Senate, Chuck Schumer remains Minority Leader until hopefully in January we can switch that. It's going to be tough, but let's see. Here's Joe Biden, president-elect, on Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, refusing to recognize his win. And by the way, these are two guys that have worked together for years and are actually friends. Mitch McConnell has said he would be open to working with Joe Biden and a Joe Biden administration unless things are too radical left, because Mitch McConnell also knows, like Lindsey Graham, no finer man has God made. Let's take a listen.
Mr. President-elect, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has suggested today that he may not recognize the outcome of this election until the Electoral College meets next month. Have you spoken to your longtime friend in the Senate, Mr. McConnell, and what do you make of his specific comments over the last 24 hours?
I haven't had a chance to speak to Mitch. My expectation is that I will do that in not too distant future. I think that the whole Republican Party has been put in a position, with a few notable exceptions, of being mildly intimidated by the sitting president. But there's only one president at a time. He's president. We're going to have the Electoral College will be making their judgment in December. It'll be announced in early January. But in the meantime, I hope to get a chance to speak to Mitch.
Well, that is former Vice President and soon to be our next president, President-elect Joe Biden. Look, he knows how the deal goes, right? I mean, he was very tempered in his words, which is basically like, look, they're towing the party line. They're kissing the ass of their current leader. They're doing what they have to do and what they need to do. And that they're intimidated. Can I just say something here? What are all these people who are kissing the ass of Donald Trump going to do when he is no longer president? Because he will no longer be president by the end of January, or 2/3 into January. He will no longer be president. And what are they going to do? Do they think that he's going to just hire all of them and appoint all of them? He's firing people now. The RNC is firing people now. So I hope it was worth it. I hope it was worth it. I hope you sleep well at night. I hope it was worth it. I could never. I don't care what my party is. I don't honestly.
If you're worried your friend may be struggling, remember, you don't have to be there to be there.
You could say, how are you, or get a fake tattoo. You could ask with an app if it works for you. You could write him a text or knit him a sweater. If you can't be together, you could write him a letter. Whatever gets you talking. Whatever gets you talking. You could chat on the game, kick off your flip-flops. You could ask on your couch while you binge watch. However you do it, you gotta ask a friend. And if they don't share, you can ask again. Whatever gets you talking. Whatever gets you talking.
Reach out to a friend about their mental health. Learn how you can help at seizetheawkward.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and the JED Foundation.
I was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean when it happened. There was a sudden jolt and our submarine crashed on the seafloor. We were in total darkness.
That's Dr. Dejana Figueroa, a marine biologist and STEM teacher, talking about a deep sea dive she'll never forget.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I was afraid of the ocean. And there I was, 2 miles below the surface. But as a scientist, you prepare for that. Using our training and a little creativity, we fixed the sub and finished our experiments. The dive was just too important. Every dive gives us glimpses at things few people ever get to see. Glowing creatures, fiery undersea volcanoes. When we got back to the surface, I kissed the ground and called my mom, of course. But you know what? I wouldn't trade that dive for anything.
Dr. Figueroa uses her passion for STEM to discover new things and make the world a better place. She can STEM, so can you. Check out She Can STEM for more stories and inspiration. A message from the Ad Council.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1887. That was the day that Louis Ling died in prison while awaiting execution for his alleged role in a bombing at a workers' rally at Haymarket Square in Chicago the year before. Louis was born in Germany. His father worked for a lumber mill. One day, while trying to clear a log jam, his father fell into an icy river. Although Louis's father lived, he could no longer carry the same workload. The company fired him despite his 20 years of service. Louis began to question a labor system that would let this happen. He became a carpenter's apprentice. Louis then traveled to Switzerland, where he became acquainted with anarchist worker groups. Finally, in 1885, Louis made his way to the United States and Chicago. There he joined the Carpenters and Joiners Union. He became an outspoken advocate for the cause of the 8-hour workday. The movement had great success in Chicago, and on May 1st, or May Day, thousands marched in the streets for the 8-hour cause. When a bomb was thrown at a workers' rally 3 days later, the backlash against the labor movement was swift and brutal. 8 men, including Louis Ling, stood trial and were convicted despite a lack of evidence tying them to the bombing. Louis Ling and 4 others were sentenced to death by hanging. But the day before the sentence was to be carried out, Louis lit a cigar in his prison cell. The cigar was packed with explosives. The explosion left Louis in agony for hours before he finally died. Some believe he committed suicide rather than die at the hands of the legal system. Others believe he was murdered. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
If you missed Leslie on TV this week, catch up at lesliemarshallshow.com.
Back. I'm Leslie Marshall. Welcome back. Only True Democracy and Talk. Let's do our second segment of Ripped from the headlines. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert, said he believes a new breakthrough coronavirus vaccine could be available to the most vulnerable populations before the end of the year, if all goes smoothly through the final stages. By the way, he's been saying this for months. Quote, "They're going to dot all the I's and cross all the T's, but I believe in the impressive nature of the data that should go through smoothly, that by the time we get to December, we'll be able to have doses available for people who are judged to be at the highest priority to get it first." That's what Fauci said during an appearance on MSNBC today. Now, the pharmaceutical giant, you've probably heard the news out that Pfizer announced yesterday that it and German partner BioNTech have developed a COVID-19 vaccine that is 90% effective based on early test results. That, by the way, must still receive full approval from independent researchers at the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. Pfizer is expected to apply for emergency approval from the FDA later this month. Now, the Trump administration promised to fast-track the approval process to expedite efforts to end the pandemic that has killed nearly 240,000 people in our nation so far this year. Now, cases are continuing to rise. We're having record numbers of infections. Once again, experts have warned the cold weather forcing more people indoors would only amplify, possibly, sadly, the infection rate. Now, Fauci is a member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force. He's been director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases since 1984. When he said he would take the vaccine himself, advises family members to do so if it receives full approval. He said, quote, "I trust Pfizer. I trust the FDA. These are colleagues of mine for decades. They are career scientists." Fauci has frequently been at odds with the president during the pandemic. The president recently suggested that he pushed for Fauci's ouster after the election. During a rally in Florida in the final days of the campaign, if you remember, Trump supporters shouted, "Fire Fauci," prompting the president to slyly respond, quote, "Don't tell anybody, but let me wait until a little bit after the election. Major news networks and the Associated Press have projected the Democratic rival Joe Biden beat Trump last week in the election. Official results are pending those final tallies. And the president can't directly fire Fauci, by the way. He's not a presidential appointee. The president could put pressure on members of his administration to oust the doctor. And this is what Trump said. He's been wrong a lot. This was at November 2nd at that rally. He's a nice man, though. He's been wrong on a lot. Biden, meanwhile, has defended Fauci from Trump's attacks. After the Florida rally, Biden tweeted that the country needed a president who actually listens to experts like Dr. Fauci. And on MSNBC, Fauci continued and said he hopes that he isn't removed from his post. He said, quote, "I don't think it would be helpful to the common goal of all of us. We all want this pandemic to end. Every minute of my life right now is devoted to trying to end this pandemic, so I would hope that I'm allowed to continue to do that. I think I do it well. I've been doing it many, many years, and I've done it under many different circumstances, including 6 administrations. So to me, I'm focused like a laser beam on the job I have in ending this epidemic." Now, as the nations continue to see cases rise, Fauci said cases could continue to spike in the coming weeks here in the United States. Quote, "I think it's pretty clear what's happening. Whenever you have a respiratory-borne illness and you enter into the cooler months of the fall and cold months of winter, you do more things indoors as opposed to outdoors. That's just another added ingredient to the risk. Health experts have advised people to wear masks and other face coverings to try to prevent the spread of the disease, a position that has evolved as more research has been conducted on the novel coronavirus." And Fauci said that new research out this week makes an even stronger case for masks. Whereas experts have pitched masks as a mitigation effort that protect others, Fauci said it now appears that mask wearers also protect themselves by using face coverings. He said, quote, "Recent studies have shown it's both ways now. It's a two-way street." And may I add, President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris are all over social media and at press conferences encouraging people to wear masks. And Joe Biden is on the phone with governors from each state, seeing if they'd be open to a mask mandate state by state so he doesn't have to do it on a federal level, or he can do it in conjunction with governors. And by the way, he's talking to governors in both red and blue states, not just red states, as our current president does. Let's rip another. Joe Biden's transition team is warning that it may take legal action if the General Services Administration fails to make an official determination that Biden has indeed won the election. The GSA Administrator Emily Murphy, who is a Trump political appointee and would seem a Trump loyalist, has not made the declaration a so-called ascertainment. That would allow officials from Biden's agency, their review teams, to access information they need in order to get to work. Now, there's a number of levers on the table, and all options are certainly available. That's what Biden's transition official told reporters. Also continuing, it's a changing situation and certainly rather fluid. The Presidential Transition Act governs how the outgoing administration is required to cooperate with the incoming one, smoothing the way for a peaceful transfer of power. Most official GSA ascertainments have been made within 24 hours of an election, except for 2000. In that electoral contest, when the outcome in Florida was down to 500 votes. This is not 500 votes. This is thousands, state by state. Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona are all, and Wisconsin and Michigan are all states the president questions, and all of those states, the president-elect is leading by more than 10,000 votes, except for Georgia. So, this is. The fat lady is on the stage with the mic in the hand, okay? She's just going to switch it on, or she switched it on, but the Trump administration is taking the plug out of the wall. Now, absent a GSA declaration, the incoming administration does not have access to agencies to look at the non-public books, and that slows their ability to change policy direction. They don't have access to office space, computers, mobile phones. They don't have access to $6.3 million in appropriated funds. They don't have access to classified information or secured facilities to review it. And the ability to request security clearances or background checks for potential cabinet nominees, they don't have that either. This threatens our national security going forward and the ability to combat this virus quicker. Shame on this body. Let's rip another. A team of 28 international observers from the Organization of American States, the OAS, issued a preliminary report in which it praised last week's election while criticizing baseless allegations of systematic fraud, according to the Wall Street Journal. And I must say, the OAS was invited by the Trump administration. They were deployed in battleground states. They say it did not witness any irregularities that would suggest an intervention in the elections. They also note that the attempts to stop the count in battleground states were clear examples of intimidation of electoral officials. President Trump is refusing to concede the race to President-elect Joe Biden. He continues to make baseless claims about widespread voter fraud. It is critical, however, that candidates act responsibly by presenting and arguing legitimate claims before the courts, not unsubstantiated or harmful speculation in the public media. That's what the report said. The team of observers monitored the election from October 23rd to November 7th, and on Election Day, members of the mission were present at polling places in Georgia, Iowa, Maryland, Michigan, and the District of Columbia, and they observed the process from the opening of the polling centers through the close of the polls and the deposit of voting materials with the appropriate local authorities, according to the report. Members of the mission also visited tabulation centers to observe the tallying of the results, and in the jurisdictions that it observed, the mission found that the day progressed in a peaceful manner. That's what's heard from the headlines. I'm Leslie Marshall. Coming up, great guest and more with you right after this. Don't
Hey, Dad,
go away.
how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Can I touch this? Where does sand come from? Is this tree good for climbing? What happens if I mix these two things together? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Storing your guns securely is the best way to prevent family fire, including unintentional shootings. For more information on safe gun storage and ways to keep your family safe, visit endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org.
What do we keep in the attic? What's this thing called? Can I ride my bike backwards?
Like I said, kids are curious. It's up to us to keep them safe. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work.
Sorry, I'm late.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi. Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Gosh, our trasher-in-chief has really been busy lately, calling Kamala Harris nasty and calling our post offices a joke. But instead of trash talking, shouldn't a president be, running the government? Nah, that bores him. Besides, that's why he packed his cabinet with all those corporate lobbyists who are skilled at trying to rig our government to serve moneyed elites. Now, empowered by Trump, these special interests are our government, literally setting and running America's economic, environmental, health, and other public policies. And what a job they're doing. On us. Check out Andrew Wheeler, head of Trump's EPA. He had been the top lobbyist for a coal mining giant, constantly fighting environmental rules to make this notoriously foul industry clean up its act. Now, the befouler's lobbyist is making the rules, allowing big coal and other fossil fuel giants to pour more toxic contaminants into our air and water. Wheeler wails that his poor multi-billion-dollar former clients must be freed from burdensome requirements to limit the damage they do to the health of America's people and our planet. Burdensome? His latest edict frees oil and gas corporations from having to fix methane leaks in their wells, pipelines, etc. Fixing leaks is burdensome? Hello, if you had a gas leak at your house, would you not want to burden the company to come fix it? Not only is methane a potent greenhouse gas causing climate change, but Wheeler's don't worry about it favor to his industry buddies comes just as scientists have discovered that methane leaks are 2 to 3 times worse than his EPA has been reporting. This means the industry is driving us toward a climate crisis faster than anyone realized. This is Jim Hightower saying, talk about nasty. The Trumpeteers have turned government totally bass-ackwards, protecting polluters instead of people.
Follow Leslie on Twitter. Just go to www.twitter.com/Leslie Marshall, and we'll be sure to share your tweets.
Hey there, we're back on Leslie Marshall's second half of the show, and we have back with us Jessica Levinson. She's a professor at Loyola Law School, founding director of Loyola's Public Service Institute, and host of the Passing Judgment podcast. It's awesome. I've been lucky to be a guest on there. Jessica's Twitter handle is at Levinson Jessica, LevinSonJessica. The handle for her podcast is at Pass Judgment Pod. And Jessica and I have become friends on Twitter once again. I think we're having some technical issues. We'll get to her in a minute, or is she there? Nobody's going to tell me? Okay. The Attorney General. Thank you. Attorney General William Barr appeared yesterday to make a bid to reassure backers of President Donald Trump, who have complained bitterly in recent days that the Justice Department was not taking action to combat alleged voter fraud and other election irregularities. In a memo, attorneys, Barr authorized them to open election fraud investigations, quote, if there are clear and apparently credible allegations of irregularities that, if true, could potentially impact the outcome of a federal election in an individual state, end quote, in that memo. But here's the thing. There's been no evidence. And we're going to talk, because I'm not an attorney, we are going to talk with Jessica Levinson, who's a professor at Loyola Law School and an attorney. And, the bottom line is, the bottom line is, I don't know if you're asking me that or her. I'm getting confused by the messages. Okay, thank you. The bottom line here is this is unprecedented. And the reason it's unprecedented is this has just not been done before. I mean, what kills me is I have always said that, and people question, is Attorney General William Barr, Bill Barr, is his allegiance to the Constitution of the United States as the Attorney General for the United States? Or does he consider himself and act and conduct himself like the private attorney for the president? Is his allegiance to Donald J. Trump? And I would say from all of the actions that he has shown, it would seem so. Well, I'm glad to have back a little technical glitch there, but we have her back. Jessica Levinson, professor at Loyola Law School, founding director of Loyola's Public Service Institute, and as I said, the host of the Passing Judgment podcast. Jessica, good to have you with us. Good afternoon.
You've got me holding my iPhone, so we're real low tech here. But thanks for bearing
you always got to have a plan B. I'm glad that we didn't lose you as a result. I was just saying before we connected about the Attorney General yesterday making a bid to reassure backers of Trump who've complained bitterly in recent days when the Department of Justice wasn't taking action, and he put that memo to U.S. attorneys. Just a few things. One, I'm a Democrat, and there are those on my side of the aisle that have been saying, and myself as well, is this guy Attorney General and a lawyer for the United States of America, or is he a private attorney for the president because he seems to have allegiance to Donald Trump and not the Constitution? A, would you agree with that? And B, how unprecedented is this?
Yes, and very, and I can expand on that, but absolutely. It's remarkable to think of how efficient and effective Attorney General Barr has been for Donald Trump, not for the American public, but for Donald Trump. And, for your viewers to take a step back and think about the first attorney general was Jeff Sessions. And it's hard to believe that Jeff Sessions was actually the one who followed the letter of the law more. And when Attorney General Barr was tapped, a lot of people thought, well, he's been attorney general before. He's an adult. He's going to know how to handle this situation. And I have been so disappointed because at every turn, he has shown himself to be so loyal to President Trump, such an effective advocate for President Trump. But again, not for the American people. He's not the president's personal attorney. Think back to one of his very first acts, which was to mischaracterize the Mueller report. He put out that summary, which was not a summary. Bob Mueller had to take the unprecedented step of saying, look, that's not what I said. And at almost every turn, he has been there supporting President Trump's, I would say, worst impulses. And now, unfortunately, it's something that it should have been one of those improbable election nightmares, but it really fell within our probable category, which is, one of the things I wrote on my bingo card was Attorney General Barr says we need to open an investigation into voter fraud, and there won't be voter fraud, and it'll be baseless, but it'll be there. And this is, I'm sorry, Leslie, a very long answer to, and is it unprecedented? Yes, we've seen attorney generals be loyal to presidents, but not like this, and not in a way that, frankly, that frankly is peddling lies. I just don't know how to say it otherwise. There is no evidence of voter fraud. There's no substantiated claims.
This memo had such a dramatic impact that the veteran career official running the Justice Department branch that oversees such prosecutions stepped down from his post effective immediately. He was not fired. He left. And Barr has acknowledged that this instruction departed from usual Department of Justice practice. He can't really launch a full-scale investigation. Well, first of all, the election result has not been certified because everybody wants to play to the emperor with no clothes and not tell him he's naked. But Barr, he said, look, he's not launching a full-scale investigation into allegations of such fraud or taking overt investigative steps until after the election result is certified. But one of the other reasons he's not is because there's no evidence, right? I mean, this blows my mind. I said it earlier. You can't just go to court and allege fraud without evidence because you don't like the outcome of the election. And it's clear that's what's going on here. And I'm sorry I'm so passionate about this. But look, Donald Trump's campaign is not arguing North Carolina. Donald Trump's campaign is not arguing Florida. Donald Trump's campaign, he's only arguing states that he won before and is losing now. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, Arizona, and possibly, looking likely, Georgia. So as an attorney, we've seen a lot of lawsuits get tossed out. Now, I mean, it's just lawsuits upon lawsuits. Let's break it down a little bit. One, Michigan, there seems to have been some faulty equipment. That can happen in elections. It does happen in elections. There are sorting machines. There's paper ballots. There's people who are, putting their votes in as I did electronically. I guess without going state by state, how likely is it that any of these lawsuits have teeth? I understand in Maricopa County, they're talking about 180 votes when the president-elect is ahead by nearly 15,000. In Michigan, they rectified the situation. In Nevada, the question that they had involved military who are overseas but have addresses in that state. And then in Pennsylvania, there have been two Supreme Court rulings, one allowing them to accept the ballots postmarked or delivered by Election Day up until I think it's November 13th or November 13th in South Carolina. And two, those ballots have already been separated per a second Supreme Court decision. Does this just delay? I mean, is it just a delay tactic? Because from where I stand, I'm not an attorney, you are, so I ask for your expertise. Is there any possibility that any of these will flip a state, never mind the election?
I think the answer is no. So it's such a good question. And, this is what I've been talking about for a few days now. So the answer is, the punchline is no. We don't have that type of Bush versus Gore perfect storm. And why don't we? We don't because the election isn't coming down to one state. And the election isn't coming down to one case in that state with enough ballots to flip the state. So you need those two things. Or you need, frankly, that it comes down to two states and you have two cases that are big enough that involve enough ballots in each of those states where it can flip the outcome in both states. That's not what we see here. We see, we see kind of two flavors of lawsuits. And, I'm not sure how much time we have to talk about it, but just super briefly.
Well, 90 minutes to break, but we can talk about it on the other side of the break too, because I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. So
1 minute now to break. So
there's the two buckets are basically the typical lawsuits, that can we have a recount in Georgia? Yes, because if you're within the margin, you can. Can we have a recount in Wisconsin? Yes, we can. And then when we could talk about after the break, if you want, is the not typical lawsuits, the ones that we're seeing from President Trump. And that's why his legal team, I think as of this morning, is 0 and 10 in these lawsuits. I mean, that's a terrible loss-win ratio. And again, for people who are listening and concerned, I do not think that these suits are going to change the outcome of the election.
Okay, we're going to take a break and we'll be back. When we come back, we can dig deeper to the non-conventional lawsuits and talk about that confidence that you have. Because let's be honest, Joe Biden doesn't need Pennsylvania to be president. The Constitution is clear. That magic number is 270. He reaches that with Arizona and Nevada. He doesn't need Georgia and Pennsylvania. We'll be back right after this.
America, your children have an amazing superpower. They can help save lives by not having play dates. That's right. By replacing get-togethers with virtual play dates and video chats, they can help slow the evil spread of germs. And if your superheroes do go outside, make sure they continue their superhero wing by staying 6 feet away from others to protect everyone in America land. Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council. America, your children have an amazing superpower. That's right. They can help save lives by simply washing their hands. Just 20 seconds of thorough hand washing after they've coughed or sneezed or been outside can help fight against the dastardly spread of germs. Armed with only soap and water and hands, your superhero can protect you, your family, and everyone out there in America land. Amazing! Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council.
He was the heart of your family, and he taught you our history. He helped you fix your first flat. He was the best backyard DJ around, and every time he'd tell a story, he'd own the room. But now more than ever, he may feel alone. Today, older adults and their loved ones are struggling to connect, in a time when connection has never been more important. But there is something we can do. Embrace our older loved ones through StoryCorps Connect. With StoryCorps Connect, you can honor seniors remotely with an interview about their life. Every interview will be archived at the Library of Congress, becoming part of American history, so that years from now, future generations can listen in.
All right, Grandpa, what's one piece of advice you have for me?
Just 3 words, sweetheart. Live with courage. The man that had the best stories still has plenty of stories to tell. So connect virtually and share the conversation of a lifetime at storycorpsconnect.org/AARP.
Welcome to Code Whack, your podcast on America's broken healthcare system and how Medicare for All could help. I'm your host, Brenda Gazar. Today, we'll continue our discussion with Hollywood dancer and choreographer Aisha Orange, who appeared in all 3 Austin Powers movies. The longtime SAG-AFTRA member and single mom is coming to terms with benefit changes.
Oh God! Yeah, when it happened, was that only yesterday that we did the thing with Ariva and somebody had
to make? Is it per year?
Yes, it went from 13,000 to 25,000 something.
Okay, and if you don't make that money, then you don't qualify for their health coverage.
Correct. Or it's a certain amount of days that you have to be on set, which was 100 days. What dance job has been going on anywhere for 2020? This could not have been the most inopportune time for someone to make such a drastic move to, I think it's 11,000 people, the poor seniors.
Have you read or heard about Medicare for All, which would provide universal health coverage for all residents regardless of their employment status? What are your thoughts on a system like that?
It would be great. I would vote, I would picket. I would totally do what is needed for everyone to be covered. I know some people who haven't been to the dentist for years because do you know how much a cleaning is? It's $100, I believe. Some people don't have it.
Get the full Code Wax story on progressivevoices.com and on the PV app. You can also listen to our episodes at www.heal-ca.org. This podcast is powered by Heal California, a nonprofit that uplifts the voices of those fighting for healthcare reform around the country. Until next time, stay healthy.
If you miss Leslie on TV this week, catch up at lesliemarshallshow.com.
And we're back. I'm Leslie Marshall. Welcome or welcome back. We are talking with our guest, Jessica Levinson, professor at Loyola Law School, founding director of Loyola's Public Service Institute, and host of the Passing Judgment podcast. Great podcast. Listen to it. I've been a part of it. It was very enjoyable. She's really good at what she does. Jessica's Twitter handle, follow her there at Levinson Jessica, and the handle for the podcast is at Pass Judgment Pod. Jessica, thank you for holding. Welcome back. We were talking about Attorney General Barr giving an okay for election fraud investigation. It's roiled not just the Justice Department, but also attorneys like yourself as well. Allegedly, the law firms, the two representing Donald Trump, are uncomfortable about some of these suits in some of these states because, once again, you can't just bring suit alleging fraud without evidence. So before the break, we were talking about the record of, 0 for 10 by the Trump administration. I mean, what if you were a lawyer on this team? Do you just play along because it's your client? And is this just meant to stall and delay the inevitable here?
No, I mean, the legal system should not work as just trying to add the veneer of legitimacy to political argument. So what would I do? I mean, I hope that I would do what this career Department of Justice official did, which is just to say, I'm out, nothing's worth this. And I have friends who have worked with him and said that, there's nobody who has higher integrity in the Department of Justice. And the fact that he said, I'm leaving when Attorney General Barr announced that, paved the way for an investigation, just speaks volumes about whether or not there's a there, which is the answer is there's not. I mean, you asked such a good question, and we were talking about that there's two flavors of these post-election litigation suits now. There's the typical flavor, again, the recount in Wisconsin, the recount in Georgia, and then there's what you just asked me about, which is the lawsuits that seem to be, frankly, just trying to play to an audience of one and placate the president and say to the president, we'll do everything we can. We'll give you kind of a soft landing out, and we'll say that we fought really hard. The reason that I think we're not seeing, at least until at this point, attorney sanctions or anything like that, is that the arguments that are being made outside of the courtroom are actually different than the ones that are being made in the papers, the ones that attorneys are signing under penalty of perjury. And so while outside the courtroom, we're seeing, people screaming about voter fraud and that it lacks the election lacks integrity, what we're seeing inside the courtroom is that the allegations are actually a little bit more arcane and, frankly, not as salacious. It's more, we didn't get meaningful access to watch the people counting the votes. Instead of there's voter fraud, or the way that you allowed people to cure votes was not fair to other people. Again, that's not voter fraud. So we are seeing this distinction between what's being said and then what's actually being filed in the courtroom, at least some of the time.
After Barr released his directive, I spoke about the director of the DOJ Criminal Division's Election Crime Branch, Richard Pilger. He actually sent an email to his colleagues saying that he was transferring to another role in the department. And he made it clear that his exit was prompted by Barr's policy. His email called the edict, as it was from Barr, an important new policy abrogating the 40-year non-interference policy of ballot fraud investigations in the period prior to elections becoming certified and uncontested. He went on to say, having familiarized myself with the new policy and its ramifications, I must regretfully resign from my role as director of the Elections Crimes Branch. He said, I have enjoyed very much working with you for over a decade to aggressively aggressively, sorry, my screen went up there. Where am I? To aggressively and diligently enforce federal criminal election law policy and practice without partisan fear or favor. And this was posted online by Vanita Gupta, who actually served in that position in the Obama administration. The wording of this memo, I think, is key, right? Because the wording of this memo left unclear whether it was largely just Barr kissing up to the president and his supporters, or whether it really lends to serious investigations in these last weeks before election and transfer of power from Joe Biden being declared the winner and Donald Trump, outgoing. Again, the attorney general has done this without any evidence based on the wording of the memo. How do you take it? How would you take it if you were in that department?
I think, frankly, it's a part of a larger theme that we've been seeing for almost 4 years now, which is that the political appointees who are part of the Department of Justice have this schism with the career members of the Department of Justice, the public servants. And that's the story, that's the backdrop against which I see this. I see the Attorney General breaking norms. I see the Attorney General, again, interfering in the election where you really are supposed to have some separation, some independence. I see the Attorney General peddling these falsehoods, frankly, because I think people are just trying to make President Trump comfortable with what's going to be the inevitable. And then I see people who have joined the Department of Justice who are career federal prosecutors and saying, I don't want to be part of this. And think back, to the census case where we saw this division in the Department of Justice, and there were career politicians who said, career members of career federal prosecutors who said, you know what, I have to step away. I don't want to sign these papers anymore. I don't want to be part of this case. And I think that we saw it with respect to some of the immigration policies. I think that we saw it with respect to some of the defense of the travel ban. And it's part, so what I see this is part of a continuation where we didn't used to see this break, where people who were career federal prosecutors were saying, I have to either leave the department entirely or I have to have a new assignment because I'm not comfortable with the direction that this is going. And it's, I know that, Leslie, you've been talking about this, and it just bears repeating that it's very dangerous to keep saying you can't trust the election results.
No, that was how I was going to, it's interesting you say that, because that was another question I was going to ask. Is this action by the Department of Justice fans the flames of insecurity and questioning the legitimacy of our elections? And in a sense, it could hurt Republicans in the Senate races in Georgia, because Republicans might say, I'm not going to vote because it's fixed.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, there's so many reasons why we should view falsehoods about voter fraud as hurting all Americans.
Mhm.
And, if there was voter fraud, first of all, where's the evidence? And second, it doesn't make any sense because Republicans actually did fine in the Senate. Republicans actually did more than fine in the House in some cases, picking up some seats. And Republicans in down ballot races also did fine. So you'd have to buy into these wild conspiracy theories that only the presidential election was changed, and that somehow there was this concerted effort among nameless, faceless people who we don't know, and that the bipartisan group of people who count ballots, that this bipartisan group of volunteers, of election board members, that they all kind of got together and said, how many votes do we have to actually get in these states to make it look legitimate?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's insane. Yeah, it's insane. I mean,
yeah.
and honestly, if Democrats were cheating, we would have won more House seats and certainly won the Senate. I was going to ask you about Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, but I'm not going to. One, the audio is like a minute and a half in length, and two, it's not. That's more political than legal. But let's get to something that is legal, and that is the Supreme Court with regard to the Affordable Care Act. It appears likely they're going to save most of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. Two members of the court, which has a conservative majority, Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Brett Kavanaugh, have suggested they're unlikely to throw out the entire health care law, as the Trump administration and Republican attorneys who are them have urged. Their votes would be enough to save it. But are you surprised? One, do you feel that they are, in a sense, forecasting that with what they've said thus far? B, are you surprised?
No, I think that they are forecasting that. I listened to oral arguments a little bit in and out because I was doing some other things at the same time this morning. But I listened, and I think that at least 6 to 7 members of the court are about where they should be, which is the individual mandate that says you have to buy healthcare insurance or else, because there's no more penalty. It can't be viewed as a tax. It's probably unconstitutional. The rest of it, I think a majority of the court will say you can sever it. You can let the rest of the Affordable Care Act stand. And, the punchline here is we shouldn't leave this up to the court. Congress should act and fix. We have elected officials for a reason.
Didn't Justice Roberts say this isn't ours to decide? We are 30 seconds away from the end of the show. We will definitely have you back, Jessica. I really enjoy. I told you I've watched you myself on television channels. So I'm like, oh hey, I know Jessica. Jessica Levinson is professor at Loyola Law School, founding director of Loyola's Public Service Institute, host of the Passing Judgment podcast. On Twitter, follow her at Levinson Jessica, and follow her podcast at Past Judgment Pod. Listen to it as well. Jessica, thank you for taking the time, because I know you're doing more media than I am these days. And more power to you, girl. And we'll have you back. And glad that we got into each other's lives once again, and that we chat on Twitter. Have a good day.